Hello, everybody, and welcome to the troubleshooting round of the Spotlight Indie Big Weekend. If you are joining us live, thank you very much. If you've been tuning in to the previous episodes that we've been panels that we've been putting on, fantastic. I hope you've enjoyed them. This is our first live panel of Spotlight Indie's Big Weekend, so it's very exciting. We want to make it as interactive as possible, so say hello. Type your questions in the comments. We are going to be showing that there's no such thing as a stupid question, which means that we're going to be answering your indie author queries. So if you are an indie author and you have a question about either the indie writing process or you just have a question for one of our panelists, please put them in the comments and we will get to them, I promise. So let's meet the panelists who will be answering our non-stupid questions. Let's go over to the glorious Graham Austin King. So, Graham, hi, how's it going? And please tell people a little bit about you.
Okay, I'm Graham Austin King. I've been self-publishing for 12 years. I'm the author of the Rivenweird Saga, The Lore of Prometheus, and Faithless, and I have done just about everything you can do wrong at least once.
Everything you can do wrong. I like that. Not just in writing. Everything you can do wrong. That's a big claim, Graham. But I believe you. It's all good. Yeah. Welcome. It's good to have you, Alex. For people who know the channel, you know Alex already, so we'll just skip Alex. Hi Alex, how's it going?
Hi, it's all right. Yeah, going very well. I mean, excited to be on this side of a panel for I think we just had the Realm Raiders one, which I was posted. So excited to share what small wisdoms I can do.
Amazing. Alex has big wisdoms as well as small wisdoms. So if you can share some big wisdoms too, that'd be great.
I will give it my all. 100%.
Love it. Next, we have the illustrious, the elegant, the electrically blue-haired LL McRae. Hi, Lauren. How's it going?
Hello, it's going well, thank you. I really wasn't sure which of us you were describing until you got to the blue hair. Like, this could still be Stephen. This could be Stephen. Yes, elegant. Yeah, it could be. But yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. Hoping the internet stays because we've got the storm going on right now. Although I imagine Stephen's probably slightly more at risk, being I think the most northern of all of us here geographically. But I'm good. My name is Lauren. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm a British fantasy author. I write under the name LL McRae. I write epic fantasy. And I've been publishing since 2017, which is 8 years if my maths is mapping. I've recently completed a trilogy, the Dragon Spirits trilogy. So book 3 came out in July, but I actually have 18 books out in total, including a couple of short stories in anthologies.
Amazing. I love it. I think your maths. I think you are mathing mathematically. I'm running into trouble here, but it's right. 8 years. Yeah.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you.
And then we have our northern representative, the Scottish Stephen McKinnon, the absolute wonder man who is braving the storm and being here with us. So, hi, Steve. How's it going?
All good. I don't know if you can hear the wind coming through like my monitor or microphone or whatever, but yeah, it's hitting fairly hard, but it's fine. I mean, nothing's collapsed or fallen in on me yet. So hopefully we can make it through this without any disasters. So I've been an indie author for 10 years. I've got one fantasy trilogy already out, another fantasy series. I won't say trilogy because I don't know if the next book's going to be the last one. But yeah, that's 2 books deep. In the Shadow of the Black Flag came out 3 months ago. So that's my most recent project, and I've just started work on the follow-up. So yeah, looking forward to showing my ignorance at these questions. All good.
Amazing. It's so good to have all of you. It's absolutely great. Hello, Holly. Our illustrious leader is here. Hi, Holly. It's great to have you with us. Topkek, hi. As I say, put all of your comments, say hello, drop some questions. For people who have tuned into There's No Such Thing as a Stupid Question before, what you know is that we take a deep dive into questions big and small. Basically, you don't have to be afraid to ask anything. If you've got a question about writing, just send it our way. What we're going to do is, until we get questions from you guys and we can interact with you live, we're going to just tackle some of like the most frequently asked questions that we get as indie authors, and we can get a variety of different responses from the panelists on those. But the more questions we get from you, the more interactive we can make this. So please don't be shy, just type questions in the comments. That'd be great. First question for the panelists. This is the one that we probably get among authors the most. It's that an author has been pursuing a trad publishing path with a finished manuscript and they're not getting anywhere with it. If somebody might be concerned that if they go indie now, it might affect their chances of going trad later. Is that something that they need to worry about? Does that happen? Is going indie something that is part of their process or should be part of their process that they should consider? Like, what are your thoughts on that if you're in that situation as indie writers? Let me go to Graham first for this one.
I'm going to say yeah, sadly. Unless you're extremely lucky, then most big publishers won't touch you. Most agents won't touch you if you've already released a book. I've actually had an agent I approached with a self-published book, hoping that they'd make it exceptional, what have you. And they wanted me to change the name of the book, which was never going to work. Strictly speaking, unless you're extremely lucky, it's just not going to work. It's too hard for the agent to sell it to the publisher, and the publishers, they want the whole package. Most of the time when you self-publish a book, you're putting it out on Audible as well, and they want those rights. They want everything so they can sell it. So if you've put it out in the world, then no, you don't really have a chance with it.
Yeah, that's talking about like a book. If you wanted to take that same book that you've written and go down the trad route with it later, I wonder what you think about, like, if it was, would it damage your chances with another book later on? Like, if you go self-publish with this one and then you write another one, what's your take on that, Graham?
No, I don't think so, especially if your first book's successful. I mean, these are hard and fast rules which are true until they're not, right? So no, a traditional publisher won't touch you unless your book's crazy successful, in which case that rule goes out the window, and yeah, by all means, what have you. If your second book is in the same world and is directly related to the first, then you're going to have problems there, I would imagine. But if it's just a second unrelated book, then absolutely go for it.
Yeah, awesome. Lauren, what's your take on this one?
I think that publishers try to kind of like latch onto whatever they can. So I've seen books marketed as debut by an author, even though it's not their debut, just because it's in a slightly different genre. So I feel like, as Graham was saying, the rules are the rules until they're not the rules. So if you're particularly successful, or if you've stumbled upon an idea that they really think that they can run with, then you can absolutely be repackaged up and have a bow put on you in a way that they think will make money, whether that's calling you a debut, even if you're not really a debut, or if you are successful enough that a trad wants you, and then you have much more negotiating rights. You know, I know a lot of indie authors that have since gone on to get trad deals, but potentially it's just ebooks or it's just hard copies, and they retain the audio rights. So I think that these days there are a lot more, I don't want to say holes in the rules, but I think there's a lot more nuance, and a lot of authors are looked at on a case-by-case basis or a book-by-book basis. But I think kind of having a really clear idea of whether you want to go indie or trad in the first place will help, because then you can put in the work in a way that will benefit you the best in the long run, if that makes sense. But I mean, never say never. And you know, you could be an indie author for, you know, decades and then have one runaway success, and then suddenly people are fighting to get your get their hands on your rights. So yeah, I would say my long-winded way of saying this is to have a good idea of what you want your path to be, whether that is trad or indie or hybrid, and then you can kind of like put the steps in place early to give yourself the best chance of success with whichever path that you feel is best for you. But don't be afraid to adapt as and when new books come out, new years roll by, and kind of new deals are potentially on the table.
Yeah, really, really good answer, Lauren. That was extremely wise. Yeah, really good.
I felt like I was just rambling, so thank you very much.
Yeah, no, it was good. Before Steve's house collapses, I just want to like throw it over to Steve. So, what do you think? What's your take on this, Steve?
Yeah, pretty much just the same as what Graham and Lauren had said. I'd recommend having a rough idea of what your aims are before you decide which path to take. So if you're successful enough to have 1 million followers on TikTok and your books rising up the Amazon bestseller list, agents and publishers will probably come to you if they think they can make a quick buck off it. The other side of that is, if you're already that successful, what can a trad publisher offer you that you can't do yourself? Because you'll still be expected to do all the social media, all the marketing, and everything else that comes by default as an indie author. So I don't know. I suppose it's up to the individual to kind of look at the markets and see, well, this book that I've written, would this do well in the indie space? Does it fit within all the genres that do well on Kindle and ebooks, or is it a bit more likely to fly off physical shelves? Yeah, I think it's all about doing your own research. Look, there's no such thing as an overnight success. You're going to have to put the graft in whichever path you take. There's no right or wrong answer. Just try and have fun with it would be my advice.
Yeah, really good. Thanks,
Can I
Steve.
just add very quickly onto that? You made me think of something, Stephen, of the why would you want that if you're already successful, or by whatever metric you measure success. I think what a lot of people maybe don't realize or forget is when you're indie, you are doing everything yourself. You're running a business. So to have a publisher or an agent say, "Oh, I want to sell your book to a publisher," and then you are very hands off that series, or you only need to worry about the writing. That can be appealing in and of itself, but also the publisher is going to open doors that will always remain closed to you as an indie just by virtue of who they are. So even if, I guess on the surface, you're still expected to do the same work that you would anyway, but with if you look kind of long term and what those opportunities might mean for you, you might be then talking to new editors, you might be talking to a new agent, you might be kind of networking with all these people in the industry to give you insider advice and insight into things that you would never have even been aware of as an indie. Like when you kind of like look at it in like as a whole, it's an opportunity. If an agent was to, or a publisher was to contact me and be like, "Hey, I really like your series, we think we can sell it," and I think, well, I can actually make more money if I sell it myself, you would be silly not to at least consider it, and like never say never, I guess.
Yeah, good things to think about. Hi, Mark. Great to see you. Welcome. Alex, because I want to open this up because what you've said already has given me lots of different extra questions that I want to run past you guys about this. But Alex, I just want to come to you before, because you promised us small wisdom, but have you got small wisdom to share on this?
Oh, maybe I can string a few small wisdoms together, and we'll make a medium wisdom just to start the panel off with. So we were sort of asking if going indie would hurt your chances, essentially, of going trad. And I agree with everything that everybody's saying. Like it's like yes, it will until it doesn't. But part of the thing that I think is important to remember as well is kind of the death of the mid-list author, so the kind of middling author at the moment. And there's an interesting article that was on an online newspaper or journal called The Walrus, which was about this kind of thing recently, which is that before you have published anything, publishers can look at you and you are this unknown quantity. You are Schrodinger's bestseller at that point. You are a debut author. You have the potential to have infinite sales. As soon as you have published, they can see the track record essentially of what you've done. So at some level, that they can look at it and say, well, you've only got like 6 reviews on Amazon. Like, so why would we want to buy, you've already made that splash. Like you can see in all the industry news and stuff like that, it's always like debut deal for X amount of money, and they love a debut. They love, and as Lauren's saying, they can just make their debut romantasy instead of whatever else they were doing. So I think it's very important to know where you want to go, because it might do if you were really set on sort of being trad published, but you wanted to just throw this story out there, and then it's the package that you put it together with. If you've just, I don't know, like done something on Paint and you've just thought, what, I don't need an editor, I'll put it up there. Then they might look at that as your track record and say, well, no one's buying that because it's kind of terrible. And maybe all you needed was an extra pair of eyes on it, and they're just not going to spend the time to go and read that. So I think it is important, very important, to know exactly what you want to get out of it, because I very deliberately also chose indie publishing first before going trad publishing, and I work in trad publishing, so that was a very conscious decision. So yes and no, which is but for various different reasons. Even being that mid-list author now, they're dying off. So if you get a certain level of advance for your first one, again, they look at the sales that you've made, and they might not, you sort of expect it like a job that you will get more and more and more because you've got more and more behind you, but you won't necessarily get that because they'll point to like, well, you only made what we considered to be a success for you. Whereas if you were an indie author and did it yourself, like your level of success is 2 rungs below that, because you're getting a lot more money for each sale. So if your book is priced on Amazon at £3, you're probably getting like £2 per sale. Whereas if it's priced at even £6 for a trad publisher, whatever they're getting off Amazon, you're only going to get like 25% of whatever the publisher gets, and that's on an ebook. And then on there's rafts and teams of people and publishers who are like made to calculate these things. So you wouldn't if you're looking, especially even from a purely monetarily point of view, you wouldn't need to sell like the 10,000 copies you would need to sell through a trad publisher to make the same amount of money and sort of have an income that you could survive on. But then you are doing all your work yourself, so yes and no is the answer. But I think just having that sort of consideration of what exactly you want to get out of it is very important. And it's not shutting the door forever, because there's more hybrid authors coming in. They can see, publishers can see that there is obviously a demand for these indie published books that they've immediately discounted because it doesn't sit directly in the middle of that commercial appeal that they're looking at. And then they'll come to you later because like, oh, actually that was really good, wasn't it? Like, yeah, I know. I tried to tell you for like 3 years and you didn't. And now I know what I'm doing, because that's the other side of it, is that 15 years ago, publishers would take the words, put them in a magic cauldron and give you a book at the end of it. And now you know how to do that yourself. There's so much information online. You can print books, just one book at a time. If somebody wants to buy it, you can print books using the same printers that the publishers use, like Lauren does, and sell those yourself. So I think, you think about what you want to get out of it, because all of the things that a publisher can give you, you can kind of give yourself as well. So it doesn't close any doors, but do you want to go through that door anyway?
I think that this is one of the things about what that door seems to be closing a lot more for a lot more people, because it seems like the publishing industry is becoming a lot more risk averse to debuts, which means that more and more people are asking this question, because you've got more and more writers than ever getting nowhere with their manuscripts. So there's this whole stigma of like, well, is it worth going indie? Is it worth even thinking about that route? I kind of want to just ask you all, as indie writers, have you found it worth going down that route with your projects? Because obviously, if you're sort of here saying sort of like it's tough, don't do it, then it's good for people to know that. Or if you're here saying like, yeah, absolutely go down the indie route, it's amazing, it's good for people to know that too, right? Because that will hopefully settle a lot of what's underlying this kind of question. So yeah, let's go back to you, Graham. Like, do you think it's worth indie publishing?
I think that the real question is, what are you hoping to get out of it? So if you're chasing that pipe dream of your book on bookshelves in Waterstones or Barnes and Noble or wherever, and signings and book tours and so on and so forth, you're not going to get that from indie publishing, most likely. Indie books are incredibly hard to get into bookshops in any real numbers over any real widespread area. You might find a local shop that will stock it. You might find 3 or 4 that will stock it, but you're not going to be in every Waterstones, for example. That's just not going to happen. Conversely, if you go trad, then you're going to miss out on a lot. You're missing out on control over what your book actually looks like. You have very limited say over what your cover art's going to be like. You have very limited say over what your narrator's going to sound like. You'll get a choice. You'll get, they'll take your opinion, but you don't have the final say or veto rights. At the end of the day, you're selling your book to a publisher. You sign on the dotted line. They give you the money. They set up the royalties and what have you to come on later down the line. But at the end of the day, you've sold it. It's theirs now to do with what they will. Indie's hard. There's very few people can put a book out and have a runaway success. There's very few people can have an overnight success. There's so much to learn in terms of writing, publishing, the editing. Marketing is a freaking nightmare that will just never end. It's not easy, and not everyone can do it. It is a real-time investment. But as Alex said, book for book, yeah, you're going to make more money on an indie sale than you are on a trad pub sale. And if you can crack it, if you have a genuine love for it, produce stories and get a decent following, then yeah, absolutely worth doing.
What about, how does everybody else feel? Like, is everybody else in agreement with Graham? Is it been worth it? It's tough, but has it been worth it for everybody, do you think?
Yeah.
I think so. Overall, there are more good days than bad days in terms of feeling if it's worth it. But it's, as Graham said, it's hard work. You're running a business on top of being creative in a way that shares your inner vulnerabilities with people, and you're very much shouting into the void. You're having to learn and relearn marketing every day, every week, because algorithms change. You send off arcs and nobody reads it, or people read it and they hate it, or you find the wrong audience buys it and reads it and rips it apart and points at all of the plot holes you thought you'd filled in. It's very thankless at times, because you're sitting for hours trying to get this into sense through a keyboard, into a way that's sellable, into a way that's marketable, into a way that people will actually part with their hard-earned money and give it to you and give it a try. And it can take you years to write a single book that somebody can read in an afternoon. So whether or not it's worth it really varies day by day. But I think overall more good days than bad days, but there are bad days. And social media is very good at, tinting things with rose-colored glasses. You only share the successes. You only share, oh, look, I've hit this milestone of sales. Oh, look, I've gone to this amazing event. Oh, look, all these people have left me these wonderful reviews. But if you were to share the lows at the same time, you would just look like you were miserable and complaining and whining. And it would look very uneven. So you just go into it eyes wide open. The amount of posts I see on like our self-publish on Reddit where people are like, oh, I've written a book, now what? Oh, I have to do all of this I didn't realize. And kind of, I know you don't know what you don't know when you first start, but just have an awareness that it's so much more. Writing the book is the easy part, and everyone thinks it's the hardest part. So yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that I was gonna that another spark that went off in my brain is the fact that it used to be the case that if you didn't sell your book and you self-published it, it was considered a failure because it's not a very good book. Now, self-publishing is a viable option. The indie route is, the market has changed. And now the indie route, you get some of the best books being written in a year by indie writers. They are just, they're amazing. And that's thanks in part to a lot of the work that you guys have been doing. You guys have been putting out indie books there for years and sort of changing the landscape and the way that it's viewed. Do you think, because Steve, you mentioned this earlier about, whether what you get out of being an indie writer, do you think that it's more viable now for somebody to sort of have indie as like, their backup option? Is that more viable for somebody who's wanting to launch themselves as an author than it used to be, do you think?
It's fairly simple in terms of what you need to do, and very complex in terms of what you need to do well. As Alex mentioned, mid-list authors, that kind of middle part is shrinking, and we're only really seeing the kind of top of the pyramid. That's probably true for indie as well. There's more books being published every day. I don't think the stigma is there anymore, or if it is, it's certainly less so. But that does have the consequence of more people are doing it. So I mean, there's always been more books out there than any one person can read in a lifetime. So I don't like to think that I'm in competition with other indie authors, as opposed to we're all in it together. And generally, like you guys, the meeting we had last year in Shrewsbury, events like that, it's everybody's quite friendly. We all know each other from social media and Twitter and things like that. So it's difficult to find success, but there's a bunch of other people in the same boat as you, and that takes a lot of the pressure off, I think. I'd recommend for anyone that's kind of thinking about it, maybe just look into what's involved before you start writing the book. Because you might have written a book and it might be awesome, but if it doesn't fit into a niche or a genre, it's going to be difficult to find an audience. And I say that as someone who loves the first book he ever wrote. It did well in SPF Bureau, but it takes like bits and pieces from so many fantasy genres that for every person I say, oh, you like steampunk? Well, you might like this, but there's also horror and kind of black comedy and sci-fi and epic fantasy and low fantasy, and some of that might put you off. So it's viable, but yeah, eyes wide open, as Lauren said.
Definitely. What's your take on this, Alex? Because Holly's raised a really interesting question in the chat, which we'll get to next. But I just want to finish.
I wanted to touch on a few bits there actually, because I think it's definitely hard but worth it. I think you get this, like sort of what Graham was saying, you get the end product that you want at the end of that. Like you still kind of have that cauldron that you throw the words at the publisher and they produce a book for you, and you kind of have a bit of like, oh, can we do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but ultimately the publisher is the one to make that decision. Whereas if you're an indie publisher, you have the option to do a lot more things, and you're the one pulling this all together, but ultimately you get to do what you want to do with it. You have like control of the creative direction. Like Fraser, your latest book, The Cage of Stars, has got some amazing design internally with like title pages and like the chapter stuff, and it looks fantastic inside there. And I can pretty much guarantee you that unless you were like the top debut that year and they'd like spent like 6 figures on your marketing campaign, I just can't see a publisher doing that. They're going to want to get like the words on the page, and that's that, full stop. Whereas you have done that with Adrian Gibson, and done really, really well. And Tamandra Whitecastle did the Queens of the Weird, and she did like a special edition, did kind of a similar kind of thing. I had like this Norse effect on the inside, and even like my print books, I've just put instead of like an asterisk between scenes, I've just put a little rune and stuff like that, where you can just have those little touches that you kind of love. It doesn't matter if nobody else notices it, but like the publisher isn't going to do that because it's just costs extra money. And I don't mind spending an extra half an hour doing that for every for when I'm typesetting something. So I think it definitely is but worth it, because you have that, you get to have at the end, like I didn't have to make any compromises, unless maybe a cost is a factor, but I did the best with what I had, and I was able to make all of those choices consciously, rather than get something at the end where the publisher has sort of said, here you go, I didn't really like that cover though. It's like, well, sorry, we couldn't afford a better one. That sort of trade-off, which hopefully you do pass the words over and they just sort of pump the promotion on it. They're just not doing that anymore unless it's right at the top. And that is hard, but you're going to have to do it anyway. So you might as well make all these lovely connections in this amazing indie community and sort of get a load of friends, a load of good books who've wrote a load of good friends who've written good books, and just all be in it together.
And thank you for shouting out Cage of Stars, and particularly Adrian Gibson. For those of you who are Adrian M. Gibson fans, tune in tomorrow on the Spotlight Indies Big Weekend. In terms of just one final thing I want to give you, a bit of Fraser Armitage lore here, guys. Right, I'm gonna confess and come clean. I initially pursued trad, right, and found while pursuing trad with my debut novel that I wasn't writing any more books, because all I was doing was pursuing trad. And it suddenly hit me, if I didn't get this book into the world, this was gonna be it. Then when indie, I'm now like 5 books down in 3 years, like, and they're out there. And as Alex says, like the sense of community that I found myself a part of, I'm now like a proper writer Whereas I would still be pursuing trad with my first book if I was. So that there is something to be said about if you knowing what you want, if you want the trad route, stay patient. But if you actually just want the book out there, like I would say there is no harm in putting the book out there and becoming what you want to be, because it's benefited me. Holly raises a really good question, piggybacking off of what Lauren was talking about earlier. Lauren raises an interesting point with Rose Tinted Glasses comment. As indie authors, is it a positive or a negative to be more or less transparent about your levels of success? I'm not going to go over to anyone specific. It's like, I would say fastest finger first, but it's more like fastest mouth first. So fastest mouth wins. Who wants to answer this one?
I think it would be positive if more people were transparent, but it's a very uncomfortable thing to do, so I can understand why people aren't. But I think, again, kind of like Laura mentioned earlier, it's easy to be transparent about the success, but I made 1,000 sales this year. Spoiler, I think last month I made like 3. So there's some transparency for you. I very rarely make very many sales, but that's fine. But yeah, and you only see this transparency from people who are like at the top, or I think once you're in the space and the community of producing indie books, it's very easy to get sucked into these groups where like there's a 20k, is it 20 books to 50k book, where the idea is that once you've written 20 books, then you don't need to sell very many of each to make like $50,000 a year or whatever it is. But they're all about the like, right. And then all the people who did post the game to the top are like, I made $100,000 last year. Isn't this terrible? Like, how do I do better? And you're like, oh my God, like if I could pay for a coffee every 3 months when my book sells, I would be so happy. So I think transparency from like all levels would be helpful, I think, so that you know that you're not just like drowning and looking at other people being like, oh, okay, like I am actually not doing that badly. Like, yeah. And so you're not just looking at this screaming into the void, and you feel like you have a sense of camaraderie rather than just getting left behind.
Really
I
good.
think it can be a bit of a double-edged sword, the transparency, because it's always nice to share successes, but you don't want to share too many, otherwise you sound like you're just bragging or humble bragging, which is never nice. And yes, you want to share when maybe things aren't going so well, but you don't want to do that too much, otherwise people just find you whiny and annoying and, oh, woe is me, oh please, I'm begging for book sales, which will definitely not help. But if you have low months or low weeks, then that's all you can share. If you want to be if you want to be like, I'm going to be honest and transparent every day this week, or once a week or once a month, I'll share what my highs and lows, and it's just lows, as it is for many indies, it's not going to help your case. So I think people say they want honesty and transparency, but only to a degree, and it's just to be very mindful of how much you're sharing. And if you really do want to commiserate or celebrate, like in a more personal way, not just a professional way, then you have like private servers and conversations that you can do that with your closer friends and peers, rather than shouting about everything in a public space, would be my thought.
Yeah, it's would that question better be directed to readers? Do readers want to see their authors kind of posting stuff like that, both the good and the bad? I see on social media. I've probably done it myself. If it's maybe I've run like a 99 sale and stuff like that, or kind of hit a bestseller category after a BookBub kind of deal, something like that. But yeah, it's a double-edged sword. I think for the negative whiny stuff, I'd rather keep that to people who can empathise, like in a Discord server. And the kind of positive stuff, yeah, I'd be worried about, am I making other authors jealous? Because most of my Twitter, it's other authors, it's peers that I follow and interact with, as opposed to readers. So I guess I'd be questioning, what am I getting out of this, and what are other people likely to get out of this if I post this? Oh, I sold 10,000 books this month. I mean, is that better just to be kept to myself? What is there going to be much good that comes of it? I think there's more scope for a negative reaction for something like that than a positive reaction. That doesn't really answer Holly's question. That's a question.
Graham, be transparent with us about transparency. Give us the transparent answer.
What? Just like everybody said, it is a double-edged sword. I think that if you go out there and say that you're doing well, then you're just going to inspire jealousy. Either that, or you're going to get everyone asking how you did it. And the truth, when I've been doing well, the truth is I have no idea what worked. If I knew what worked, I'd be doing well all the time. So you can't help people that much with marketing and things like that, other than directing them to the same courses that everybody's already taken. Whining does not help. Complaining does not help. It's just going to create a backlash. And sadly, I've known several authors that have been frustrated and they're just getting a downward spiral, and it just goes down into a dark, horrible place, and nobody wants to be exposed to that endlessly. So an element of transparency is great. You know, I'm doing well. I'm doing well enough to put another book out next year or what have you. Fine, keep your readers involved and informed, and keep your friends involved and informed, but there's a limit.
Yeah, really.
There's also like an element of, because the books we don't work in a meritocracy. Popular books sell, not the best books sell, and best is subjective anyway. But if you are sharing something that implies that you're quite popular, people have FOMO and be like, oh, well, everyone's talking about this book, therefore it must be good, therefore I'll give it a buy and give it a go. But then equally, if they think you're doing popular, they're like, oh, well, they clearly don't need me, so I'm going to go and help this other one. So you're kind of damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I think just sharing as much or as little as you feel comfortable in a way that feels more authentic is kind of the best way to go. It's kind of a shame, because then it feeds into the whole nobody is transparent because we're all afraid of like either stepping on toes or coming across in the wrong way, which doesn't help. But I think sharing something and maybe offering deeper insights to like more of a fan club, like if you have a Discord server or an Instagram channel or a Patreon, something like that, where you can be a little bit more sort of open, is nice. But yeah, it's just don't share, but if you share, don't share too much, and not to either end of the extremes, which is a cop-out answer. But yeah.
But I guess also if you do share them, be authentic. Like be truthful, tell the truth. Don't make out that you're something you're not, or be overly humble when you sold 1 million books last month or what have you.
Totally. Holly says if you sell 10,000 books in a month, you can tell us, as long as you tell us how. And if you can sell 10,000 of my books in a month, that would be great. Jamie is here. Hello, Jamie. Fire us a question, Jamie. We'll answer it for you. One of the things that, because you just mentioned about authenticity, Graham, one of the things that I was thinking about with Holly's question, and which Lauren mentioned as well, is this expression about rose-tinted glasses when it comes to social media. Because for me, I think the way that I frame success in my mind is not the same as having rose-tinted glasses. For example, I released Cage of Stars on the 9th of September. Now, I have had 3 ratings on Amazon and 2 reviews. I got 2 Goodreads reviews so far. Now, I can look at that and I can say, I sent out loads of arcs. I should have more reviews than that. This is not going well. Or I could look at that and say, well, all of those reviews that I've had have been really positive. And that to me is a success. Someone's read it and enjoyed the book. Now, that's not me looking at it in rose-tinted glasses. What I'll post on my social media is, how great are these reviews? This is amazing. Thank you. Because I'm grateful for that. Mm-hmm. So, but for me, it's about reframing success. Because if I was looking at it purely from a numbers game, I would say, what a terrible result in terms of reviews. But it's not always like that. I think as an indie, you can choose to reframe your success. Whereas if you're underneath trad publishing, it's a numbers game, pure and simple. And would you guys agree with that you've got a lot more flexibility over what you define as success as an indie?
100%. Yeah. Like, Ed, that was sort of how the answer for that, that first question was framed, wasn't it? It's like what your goals are. And yeah, as you say, with a trad publisher, their goal is to sell a lot of books, because ultimately they are a business. They're a very creative business, and the people that work in it will care about books and storytelling and publishing. But ultimately, if you don't sell enough books to earn out your advance over a certain period of time, they're like, well, we can't pay them that money again, and we might not pick up the next book. Whereas with a, an indie, thing, even if you're not earning that much, you can be like, those 3 reviews you've got, I think I've probably got, not very many reviews on my books as well, but I'm so grateful for the ones that I have got, because I've clearly connected with those people that have read it. And isn't that literally magic? Just, you've written some squiggles on a bit of tree, and then they've got these pictures and people in their mind. So that, I think reframing it and just being grateful for, it is easier as an indie, because you can change the goalposts wherever you want them to be.
There's more scope to bask in those wins, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not beholden to the I've not done enough. I think it's great. Devan asks a really brilliant question. Hi, Devan. I hope I pronounced that right. As indie authors, I imagine you have more freedom and flexibility when it comes to your book. Are there any hard and fast rules that you've borrowed from trad to help with your success? Which is a really good question. Who wants to weigh in on this one?
I don't know if it's borrowed from trad as such, but getting a second pair of eyes to look over it, even if it's just looking over parts of it, because I think whether you go trad or indie, you should do that before you submit your book or upload it to Amazon or anything, because you might think it's the best book ever, other people might disagree. Conversely, and probably more likely, speaking as a writer, you might look at it a month later and think, God, this is awful, and somebody else would say, it's actually not that bad, you're doing all right. So just get a fresh pair of eyes. It's really, really easy to upload a book onto KDP, Amazon, to the point where you could do it by accident almost. So take your time, get some feedback. I don't know if it's a trad thing. They'll have their in-house editors and things like that. So I guess the indie equivalent would be I hire an editor or a proofreader. But even before that stage, if anybody's willing, get some better reader feedback. Phil Parker's really good. He's always up for. He always takes up my call to arms. I say, does anyone want to read this before I send it off and get it polished up? I don't know what the trad equivalent of that is, if that's entirely in-house. But if it was me and if I owned a trad publishing house, if I was relying on the same person every time, I'd maybe expect them to have a counterpart as well, just so they're not getting jaded and they've got fresh eyes. That's the only thing I would kind of take from it.
Yeah, just the issue about editing could be its whole other question, right? Because it's like, what do you do as how do you self-edit? Do you hire editors? It can be a minefield, can't it, for people? But yeah, I think going back to this about trad, what do you think? We mentioned earlier, there are rules until there's not. Do you think that kind of applies across the board for trad? When it comes to the things that we're looking at as indies and saying sort of what can we do? Because quite often, isn't it trad that's borrowing from us?
Yeah, I think you're right in that as well, because there's rules until they're not, and now it seems like there's lots more of those subscription boxes like Illumicrate, and it suddenly trad has realized that there's a lot, there are people who are willing to pay more for a very special edition of their book, and suddenly they're doing all these special editions themselves, which is lovely. But also, indie authors have been doing that for a while, and we've been doing Kickstarters as well to help fund the cost. But yeah, as indie authors can be more agile, they can test out things a little bit more, so it definitely feels like they'll look to the successful things that indie authors have done and be like, actually, can we make that work as well? Because they're risk averse. We've touched on that earlier. They sort of want stuff that they are pretty sure is going to work, whereas indie authors can kind of do what you want. I think the only hard and fast rule I picked up from the trad publishers was the actual size of the book, because I wanted it to fit on the rest of the shelf with my own. So that was, I think, the only thing I took forward.
Yeah, if you've written a book that's 500,000 words, split it into 2 or 3. That's the
Well, yeah, and you could do that, and that's absolutely fine. Whereas a trad publisher would, I think they do that. Well, they did that like Brown and Sanderson and stuff, and yeah, it's because they anyway, yeah, exactly. I think they probably looked at indie authors because we can do kind of whatever we want.
Oh man, how long is it going to be until like trad starts going down Kickstarter? That's going to be the
Yeah.
Yeah, nuts. What about you guys? What about Graham, Lauren? Have you got, when you look at trad, have you got anything that you look at and think, oh yeah, I need to be doing this?
I follow most of the same process that trad would do anyway. So, I hire professional editors, I hire professional cover artists. I married my editor for proofreading and beta reading, so that's cut down the cost a little bit, but I think the thing is with self-publishing is that there is a stigma. There has been a stigma for a long time, and people conflated it with Vanity Press for the longest time. And I personally think that if you are going to self-publish, then you've got a bit of an obligation to put the effort in and put out a really quality product. I've seen so many panels on self-publishing where people have been on the panel saying, oh, we didn't do this to make any money. I just want to get my book out there, and I made my cover on Microsoft Paint and what have you. And I'm just sat there quietly horrified. It's not cheap. It's not cheap to put out a decent product. The hope is that you spend the money and you make the money back. But traditional publishing has changed hugely. I don't think that they have many in-house editors anymore. I think they farm them out to the same people that we're going to. The same thing for cover art, for example. If they're not getting stock art and they're going to get original art, they're going to the same sort of artists that we're going to. So those rules are sacrosanct. You will need a beta reader, you will need a proofreader, you will need a copy editor, you will need someone who can format, unless you're lucky and have talent like Alex, because I can't format for toffee. You need to go through all these steps to produce a decent product, and if you don't, then sadly you are feeding that stigma. You're feeding the beast that indie pub or self-publishing, to use the dirty word. It's vanity for the publisher, for the writer rather, and that's not what we want.
I love the word sacrosanct, Graham. Got chills. That was great. Lauren, do you want to weigh in on this one?
I think everybody's already covered a lot of it. I mean, if you look at the acknowledgements page of any traditionally published book, there will be a long list of people. That won't just be the agent and the editor. There'll be people in the author's writing groups that they've batted around early ideas with and brainstormed, and they've helped mold this story into something that is as sellable as it can be. Like that's what the goal of trad is. So I think it's just to bear in mind that if you want to tell your super quirky, unique niche story, you can go through the beta readers and editors and get feedback and polish it to the best of your ability. But it still might not sell, not because it's not good, but just because there's nothing in there that I think the majority of readers would want to read. And it's just, I guess, being aware that there's the story that you want to tell, to get out there, may not sell just by virtue of what it is, whereas a lot of the trad books will be a lot more mainstream in terms of broad appeal. So I think, going back to the original question about taking something from trad, if you want to write the book just to get it out there, that's fine. But if you want to write the book and get it out there and ideally sell in terms of, enough to be able to buy coffees and maybe pay some bills, then you need to kind of have an awareness of, how can I make my unique story, I don't want to say palatable because it sounds like you're downplaying your writing, but I guess it's just having an awareness of how would you sell it? Like what would you do? What would trad do if they had taken on this, and kind of thinking about that approach? And it might be, comparing yourself to certain authors or certain books and things like that. But I think it's just, I'm rambling again. I'm really, really sorry because I have not prepared this. I think it's just having an awareness of how your story would fit in the world and with readers, and how you would find the right audience for your book, and whether that audience is big enough for the purposes that you're writing the book, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense, Lauren. Lauren's
I'm
in the
glad.
middle of giving this
None
really,
of you were reacting at all, and then
really-
you all wanted, so I'm really glad.
really
glad.
eloquent answer, and then is like, "Yeah, I'm just rambling. It's like I would love to hear you eloquent, Lauren, if that's your ramble." In terms of just one thing that I want to just add on to what people are saying. The other thing about trad publishing is that it takes a long time. So you write the book, and that is not the end of the journey. You've then got a couple of years before the book comes out. And the thing, because the question from Divan is all about what has helped with your success. What's helped with my success is when I decided to go down the indie route, I thought about every step of the way intentionally, because if I just rushed it and got the book out there, it would not have been a success. And I would not have had those moments of like, oh yeah, I've reached a reader and that kind of thing, because it wouldn't really be sort of like finished. And so this is where I think if I've borrowed anything from trad, it's that ability to just stop myself from rushing forwards and saying, I need to think through every single thing. I need to think through the cover. There are no rules. You can do what you like, but make sure what you're doing has purpose and intention behind it, because that's the market you're competing with, you know? So yeah. Before I move on to Jamie's question, we can have a moment of appreciation for Lauren's mug. Are we talking, Holly, about Lauren's mug or her face? Because I think we can do both, right? And thank you, Tufty. Yeah, Tufty McTavish. There's lots of mug love for you tonight, Lauren, which is great.
Yeah. Product placement, right? If only I sold mugs.
You could do it as a sideline. That's what you could do. See, perfect. There you go. See, it's official.
Thank you.
Jamie would feel like a success if he finished his book, and I feel like that would be the case as well, Jamie. But he has this question to ask about success: do we end up redefining success for ourselves based on hitting milestones, such as a finished story, a printed copy, positive reviews? I guess this is more along the nature of like, at what do we celebrate as indie authors? At what point do we say, yes, I've done this? Or are we always just pushing the goal lines? What's everybody's take on that?
It never ends. Goalposts continually get moved for me. Probably not healthy, but I think it's, yeah.
I don't think you're alone in that, though. I think that's everybody.
Yeah, I think that's what we all do. But I think it's also important to turn around and look at the goalposts you've already passed every so often. But I'm quite a slow writer, but I like to look at the books occasionally. But I did that. I did those two things. That's fine. And just remember that, like finishing the book is a success, like proofreading it, doing all these other things. But then once you're on the next step and you're looking towards the next step, don't forget to be proud of the steps you've already accomplished. It's, again, with the fact that indie is faster and people can do a lot more, like you hear of people doing a book a month and everything, it's easy to feel like you're not going fast enough. But you just go at the speed that you need to go at and be proud of what you're doing. I think that's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah. What about you, Steve? What's your measure of success? Is it changing?
Yeah, I think that's human nature. Goals change, things evolve, and I don't know. I can't imagine ever being satisfied for very long. There's always something new to try, or I think you want to push yourself. It's like going to the gym. I mean, you could spend the whole time just lifting the same weight and doing the same amount of reps, but it's not going to push your body any further. It's not going to make you stronger. There'll come a time where you think, no, I'm going to go for the next weight up, or I'm going to try it a different way, or try something completely different. You'd go crazy otherwise, I think. That being said, if I had a goal of the 10,000 books a month that was mentioned earlier, if I hit that and somebody put a gun to my head and said, you have to retire, I'd probably take them on that. I'd be like, yeah, I'll pay the money to run. But then I'd find something else to obsess over if it wasn't writing books. So, it's a cyclical, it's a constant thing.
But that's it. Writer is in the continuous tense, right? It's not something you don't get to the end of a book and then go, well, I was a writer for a bit. It's like we are writers. We're always doing it, which means that there's always another goalpost. It might not be the same goalpost that you've had, but you're gonna keep doing it because this is what we do. Is what we do. That's what makes us who we are. Because we love it. That's why we write. So I don't think you ever get to the point where like you can look back on your achievements and you can say, yeah, I did that, but that doesn't mean that you're necessarily gonna say, yeah, that's it, I'm now a success, because you're always going to be focusing ahead on the next thing, because that's what we do. And that brings us nicely to the end of our question. Thank you so much to Holly and to Divan and to Jamie for sending in your questions and for interacting with us as part of this panel. It's been a real joy to hear from you who are tuned in with us live. For everybody else who's tuned in, we hope that you've got something beneficial out of this. And for everybody who's here, Graham, Alex, Lauren, Steve, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And big wisdom from all of you. It's great. And the added bonus of Lauren's mug. Let's go around and just tell everybody where they can find you. Graham, let's start with you. Where can people find you if they want to chat with you more or ask you more not stupid questions?
The easiest place to find me is on Facebook. I'm very readily available there. You can reach me through my website at grahamaustenking.com. Lots of cons in the UK. Bristol Con, World Fantasy Con. Come find me. Buy me beer. Buy my books. Do both.
Yeah, buy 10,000 beers and books.
Buy 10,000 beers and a book a day a week. They double as posters. They're really good like that.
Yeah, amazing. Alex, what about you?
My website is alexsbradshaw.com, and I'm on Alex S. Bradshaw on the various socials, so come find me wherever. Obviously, I'm also doing stuff with Spotlight Indie, so come find me and the Spotlight Indie team at spotlightindie.co.uk. I'm going to be at WFC at the end of this month as well, so come find me, say hello. I would love to speak to you.
Amazing. Lauren, what about you?
So my website, llmccrae.com. Everything is there, links to my socials. I'm mostly on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Twitter until that dies. So DMs are always open, or you can always comment on one of my posts. I share a lot of behind the scenes Comic-Cons on Instagram that I do, and I also bake a lot, so I share baked goods on Instagram too. So whether you like books or sweet treats, that's the best place to find me.
Lauren's sweet treats are epic. Steve, what about you?
My website is stephenmckinnon.net. That's Stephen with a again, I'm pretty active on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter is at SHR McKinnon, and Instagram is just Stephen McKinnon author. I am useless at baking, so there will be none of that on my Instagram, unfortunately.
I'm just so glad your house has stayed up. Honestly, to me that's a win, right? It's well done. Mark, thank you for joining us, and thank you for the lovely feedback. Anna, really glad to have you, and yeah, we're excited for the rest of the weekend too. Jamie, you're welcome. And Holly she knows me. She knows I would have forgotten this. So thank you, Holly, for the reminder. As part of the Spotlight Indie Big Weekend, we are extending the length of the giveaways that we're doing. So if you go to our social media, you can find all of the links on the website spotlightindie.co.uk. But if you go to @SpotlightIndie on places like Blue Sky and Twitter and Facebook and all that kind of stuff, find the posts about the giveaways and then follow the instructions. And on Sunday, on our very last sort of panel, where we're going to have a Spotlight Indie party with another few authors, we are there going to announce the winners of the giveaways. So you've got until Sunday, 9 p.m. UK time. Well, probably before that. You've got until Sunday to enter the giveaways. So make sure you do that, because there are some amazing prizes to be won. And if you don't enter like Lauren's prize, I'm just gonna have it because it's amazing. But yeah, basically everybody has contributed loads of good stuff. Go enter the giveaways. They're amazing. You'll love it. Thank you for joining us, and everybody. And next on the big weekend, what you're going to be enjoying is a little sit-down chat between me and Graham. So you get a double dose of us. We're going to be looking into Graham's experience as an indie author a little bit more, his career and his writing process and why fantasy is cool and all the good stuff. So we will see you there. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the big weekend, everybody. Tune in again live at 9 p.m. UK time, where we'll be attending Phil Parker's launch party, and I will see you there. Bye, everybody.
Bye.